Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. I'm Ryan Wormeli, joined as I am every Tuesday by Andrew Erickson. We just taped our running backs episode. This is now our wide receivers to buy and sell. We've also got some quarterback and tight end talk for you as well. And we also have some trade reaction. Now, we are taping this a few hours before the NFL trade deadline, so we can't obviously talk about everything that happens in the next couple of hours because we will be done taping by then. But there have been some trades that have already gone down involving some receivers. So we're going to talk about those that have already happened here at the top of the show. You'll hear other reactions and stuff throughout the week on the rest of our programming here at Fantasy Pros. But I just want to let everyone know because this will definitely be released well after the NFL trade deadline. If anything else happens besides what we're talking about here, we will have missed it. And if anything happens during the show after this opening segment talking trades, we'll hit on it quickly as kind of breaking news. We will have Twitter up and kind of see what goes on. But we have two trades that have happened already today that are relevant to fantasy. We reacted actually live to the Sauce Gardner trade on the running back show. So if you want our initial reactions on that, you can go listen to that. But we have a couple wide receivers here. The first one happened earlier in the day, Jacobi Meyers to the Jaguars. This is a trade that Jacoby asked for months ago. Finally gets it here on trade deadline day. The Jags obviously have a need with Travis Hunter on IR. Brian Thomas Jr. has an ankle sprain, though they think he might play this week as of right now. But clearly a need there. These two teams just played each other, Erickson, and they made the switch. It's always fun when that happens. Well, what was your first thought when you heard Jacobi Meyers to the Jaguars? Was it, this is good for Jacobi Meyers? Was it, this is good for a Raiders receiver? Was it, this is bad for Parker Washington? What was the first place your mind went?
I think it's good for Jacobi Meyers. That's kind of where I settled on the trade. You look at what Liam Cohen, what he was most successful doing when he was in Tampa Bay. It was featuring Chris Godwin in the slot. And so far this year, when Travis Hunter has been healthy, he's been pretty effective in the slot. He's at least seen a ton of volume in the slot. And Parker Washington, another guy that has popped off in some weeks this season, he's predominantly a slot receiver. So I don't think that this buries Washington. I think that he still has chemistry with Trevor Lawrence, which clearly matters, right? That's the thing that Jacobi Meyers that's the hurdle, right? Does Trevor Lawrence develop that rapport with Jacobi Meyers where we can actually trust him in our fantasy lineups? Because I think schematically, Jacobi Meyers does fit what Liam Cohen wants to do as a slot receiver. We'll see how long it takes him to get up to speed with the offense, but Jacobi Meyers is a really good receiver. Very, very underrated, I think. Last year, he had over 1,000 receiving yards, and I don't think it impacts the Raiders that much because he had been kind of getting phased out of this offense, right? Not really involved. He was injured for a little bit of the season, and I think we've already seen Trey Tucker be a full-time player in that offense. I think for Jack Bash, this is a bump for him. I think that this rookie receiver will now have a role in the Raiders offense, so I think that's good for him, but we know that it's the Brock Bowers show with the Raiders and Ashton Genty. Those are the two focal points of the Raiders offense, so I don't think it really messes up their receiver room that dramatically, except in some dynasty circles where Besh is obviously going to have a much bigger role now. But besides that, it's really more about Jacobi Meyers being a good fit for this Jacksonville passing game, and maybe that they're not telling us as much about these injuries with Travis Hunter, with Brian Thomas Jr., with Diane Brown, who also got banged up. I think that also lends itself to, hey, we're Jacksonville, we need more wide receiver bodies, right? We're running out of guys, especially with Brendan Strange also on injured reserve. So I think that's kind of my mindset and my thoughts on that move.
Erickson, I don't know if you saw the other trade that happened just a few minutes ago.
Yeah.
Rashid Shaheed to the Seahawks, reuniting with Clint Kubiak. Mm-hmm. This is really interesting for a couple of reasons. Number one, I think that a lot of people were excited about Torrey Horton as a breakout. This hurts. Number two, just seeing Shaheed reunited with his former offensive coordinator, Will Brinson, from CBS. I think he's still with CBS. Mm-hmm. He tweeted out a couple of minutes ago, Shaheed's 17-game pace with Clint Kubiak in 6 games before the injury last year was 116 targets, 57 catches, 988 yards, 17 and a half yards per catch, and 9 touchdowns. And that was with the worst quarterback situation than 2025 Sam Darnold. So this could be really exciting. I'm curious. Let me get your initial thoughts on Shaheed, and then I have a follow-up for you. But what do you think, first about Shaheed to the Seahawks?
I like the move for real life. It makes total sense. The Seahawks had not a dire need at receiver, I would say, but look, Cooper Kupp is banged up. He's an older receiver. He's not reliable, in my opinion, to make it during a 17-game season. He was injured. Torrey Horton, I think, was a really exciting player, but now you're adding Shaheed as this other element to it's just going to be so hard for teams to take JSN away. I mean, they already have been able to do it, and now you're adding a speed demon that can be used in all sorts of ways behind the line of scrimmage. It's almost, I don't want to say it's like having another JSN, because that's not really a good comparison, but just having another chess piece that Clint Kubiak can use that we've already seen work, because we've already seen Kubiak coach Shaheed when he was highly efficient last year in this offense. Like, he was really fun, very explosive, used downfield. And we know that Sam Darnold can sling it downfield. He's been one of the most, I mean, he's basically been the most efficient passer this season. So I just think it's a uptick for this entire offense overall. I kind of feel like everybody wins. So even if JSN, I mean, I don't know. Is this good for JSN?
Horton doesn't win. Horton's the loser.
Okay, well, he'll just be on he'll stay on all the waiver wires then. Yeah. That's fine. But besides Horton, yeah, I think this is kind of a win all around. I guess you could argue, well, now JSN's not going to see as many targets. Also, Cooper Kupp, he's a loser too here. I don't know how
I'm not worried about JSN is not going to see any fewer targets because of this.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel too. I'm not.
Olave maybe getting more targets.
Dude, how many more targets can he get? Like,
I don't know.
Like that's,
I don't want to talk about the Saints.
The Saints. If we want to spin it, Devon Vele season, big slot baby.
Okay,
so maybe that's a dynasty buy because it's a rookie quarterback. But Devon Vele, they traded for him. He will have a much bigger role as a starter in the Saints offense. What does that mean for your fantasy redraft team? Probably nothing. But dynasty, scoop him up. He was pretty good as a rookie. They traded for him. I mean, they traded like a 4th round pick to get a former 7th round pick on their roster.
I know.
So again, not co-signing on that as a good deal, but they did it. And clearly Kellen Moore likes Devon Vele enough to, okay, we moved Shaheed. So that's maybe a move for the Saints side, and maybe we're a little Taysom Hill action. But besides that, I mean, Olave's targets can't get any higher in my opinion. Juwan Johnson, I think, is just like a floor play every week just because they see volume. But yeah, those are kind of my thoughts. I don't know. I think it's just kind of wait and see with Shaheed. I think he'll probably be kind of boom or bust, but I think he could have some pretty big explosive games in the Seahawks passing game.
Dane Brugler points out that there are now, after the Sauce Gardner trade, there are 4 teams with multiple first rounders in the 2026 draft. The Jets, Browns, Rams, and Cowboys all have an extra first rounder this year, which is really kind of interesting.
One is not like the other.
Yeah. By the way, just because I mentioned Will Brinson, I loved the Pick Six podcast at CBS. I thought that was a really fun show. I miss it. Shouts to him and Breach. Also, as a part of that Sauce Gardner trade, because this came out a few minutes later after the initial trade broke, A.D. Mitchell is going back to the Jets as part of that deal. So really? The Jets are getting 2 firsts and A.D. Mitchell. That's according to Jake Glazer. So I don't know. I really liked A.D. Mitchell as a 2nd-round pick, like in rookie drafts in dynasty leagues a year ago. Obviously, it didn't really happen with the Colts. I felt like there was stuff that he did. There are some analytics that really liked his like separation ability, and there were metrics out there that pointed to him as like a strong potential like very late round flyer breakout type of guy in fantasy drafts. Clearly, like did not even come remotely close to happening. I wonder if this opportunity with the Jets, like obviously it's kind of a broken passing game in general, but there's a lot of opportunity beyond Garrett Wilson to get targets. So I could see like I think in most leagues you're probably not rushing out to add A.D. Mitchell, but in deeper leagues, I would take a flyer. Now, the thing I will say too, in-season receiver trades often do not work out, and that's something to consider with both. Now, Shaheed a little different because he's played in Clint Kubiak's system before, but with Meyers, with A.D. Mitchell, if you're in a deep league, like they often do kind of fail.
I think A.D. Mitchell's a good wide receiver. I think that we saw that in the one start that he had this year where he was really productive, but then he had the mental lapse and did the touchdown thing where he didn't score the touchdown. He got benched the next week, and now he's gone from the Colts. So, again, he came out of college a little bit of a mental, I don't want to say like a head case or anything like that, but like a little bit of an attitude. So, going to the Jets, I don't necessarily know that I love that for a player's mental state, being on the New York Jets. But to your point, one of the biggest hurdles he was facing with the Colts was he just never got on the field because they just have so many talented receivers on that team. So he never really got an opportunity to play that much. Even though when he did play, I thought that he would usually exceed expectations. So he's going to at least get to run a lot of routes. for the Jets because they don't have anyone else at wide receiver besides Garrett Wilson, who is practicing this week and expected to hopefully come back to the lineup. But if not, I have no issues. I mean, you can't pencil him as wide receiver 1 this week just because he hasn't been with the team, but a couple weeks, I think that he probably will be a full-time starter on the Jets offense. Now, what does that mean for fantasy? Probably not a ton, but I think probably a net positive for Mitchell, just the fact that he's going to get to play more. So, yeah, interested to kind of see how that plays out.
It's funny, before we started taping, you were like, so do you want to just do like all the trade stuff at the end of the show? And I was like, well, there's probably not going to be that much. So let's just talk about it as it happens. And now it's like, actually, there's a lot going on. So far, we'll see kind of what continues, throughout the rest of the show and, of course, the rest of the afternoon across the NFL. I do want to let everybody know that if you want a chance to win one of the most unique pieces of NFL fan gear out there, the large NFLPA wall smack, courtesy of our good friends at Trophy Smack, the #1 destination for epic fantasy football hardware, then this is your shot. Their oversized, officially licensed NFLPA wall smack are bold statement pieces that are perfect for your fan cave, office, or living room wall. It's not just decor. It's a way to help rep your favorite players in style. To enter, all you need to do is subscribe to the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel right now. Drop a comment below on any of our videos. That is it. We will be announcing a winner right here on the channel, so make sure to turn on notifications so you don't miss your chance to claim this epic prize. Erickson, let's finally get into our wide receivers to buy, which is the crux of the show here. You are starting us off. We talked about a lot of rookies in the running back show. We're going back to another rookie that we've talked about on the show before here with your first wide receiver to buy.
Tetairoa McMillan, wide receiver for the Carolina Panthers. Look, the ceiling has not been here for T-Mac this year, but he has shown an extremely high floor and looked pretty good for a first-round rookie pick just last week. Again, it was the Rico Dowdle show, but McMillan's peripherals were excellent. Led the team in targets with a 30% target share, and he was efficient. So I get that he hasn't popped in a big way just because he's on the Carolina Panthers offense, but he's 12th in expected fantasy points per game. He's a top 10 schedule rest of season. And besides rookie running backs, you know who else breaks out in the second half of seasons? Is rookie wide receivers. So I think that if Bryce Young can get back to full health in some games where maybe it's a little bit more back and forth with the Carolina Panthers, I just like buying T-Mac and trying to get a chance at an upside play when, worst case scenario, he's a floor and he can be like a wide receiver 3 for you and he's not going to kill you in your lineup, as he's shown every single game this year. Basically, he's been very consistent. And again, you just need a couple favorable matchups here and there. Obviously, against Dallas is when he had 2 touchdowns, so that was one of his better games. He finds the end zone a couple more times. I think that he's worth buying at and just hoping that maybe he hits the ceiling in some of these playoff matchups down the line.
Yeah, the only thing I question is just like what the touchdown total will look like by the end of the year. Like, obviously, when you are producing as much as he has been, especially as a rookie, like you would anticipate that would follow. It really hasn't. Like, right, that game against Dallas is the only time he has scored a touchdown at all this season. Having said that, I agree with you as a good target, especially with like a little bit of a dip lately. And he's wide receiver 19 in the rest of season rankings. I don't know that is wildly wrong because there's just a lot of names ahead of him that I don't know if I would like want to put him over. One name I would put him over still is Zay Flowers. I've been talking about it all year. Even with like Lamar looking very good coming back, I would rather have Tetairoa McMillan than Zay Flowers. Zay is ranked a couple spots ahead. So like I would make that trade if you could. Some of the names behind Tetairoa McMillan are DK Metcalf, Michael Pittman, Cortland Sutton, T. Higgins. It feels okay to me, but that's kind of like the right, I think, range of names for him. Kind of that mid to back half wide receiver 2 would be what I would be looking at him as. But he's so I don't think the rankings are wrong, but he's still a guy I would like to invest in because I could see that going up if a few things start breaking his way, particularly in the end zone moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, just he has everything else, right? The floor is really high. So that's why I feel good about trading for him, knowing that, okay, this guy's not going to be a total bust in my lineup. But if there's a chance that I think the Panthers haven't had their bye week yet either. So maybe they fix some things. They look to use him a little bit differently. Jalen Coker gets going, maybe takes some of the heat off of Tetairoa McMillan, and maybe Bryce Young a little bit healthier. I mean, we've seen Bryce Young in the second half of seasons kind of like ball out, right? So I get that he can be inconsistent. Yeah. So
the bye's not till week 14, by the way. Yeah. So it will be like into the fantasy playoffs coming out of that where you're taking maybe more of a risk, but.
Okay. Yeah. But, yeah.
He's wide receiver 22 on the season, by the way, even with just the 2 touchdowns.
Yeah.
So
it's pretty strong.
Feels like there's more upside there for sure. I'm with you. By the way, Shaheed, that trade was for a 4th and a 5th rounder. That feels like kind of a lot. I think they're going to want to use him if they're spending that kind of draft capital.
Yeah, and they'll probably sign him to a contract because he knows the offense. Cooper Kupp, I don't know. I'm pretty sure Cooper Kupp's deal, and don't fact check me on this, I think that it was very, hey, they can get out of this after 1 year if it doesn't work out with an aging wide receiver, which is kind of like typically what you do when you sign a older receiver to a free agent contract. So I would presume that they try to get out of Cooper Kupp and they have Shaheed be the number 2 alongside JSN and Torrey Horton kind of be that number 3 guy.
Yeah. Let's go to your other wide receiver to buy. I actually just mentioned him because he is ranked in the rest of the season rankings. One spot behind Tetairoa McMillan. It's DK Metcalf.
Yeah, so this is kind of the opposite, where it seems like DK Metcalf can only score touchdowns and really not do much of anything else. So this is a process play where I'm going to buy a wide receiver 1 on his team and the alpha target earner on his team because we've already talked about some of these trades, real life NFL trades. This is good for DK Metcalf because you know who's been searching for wide receivers in free agency has been the Pittsburgh Steelers. So they're not going to get Jacobi Meyers. They're not going to get Rashid Shaheed. So again, trade deadline has passed when you're listening to this, so maybe they have traded for somebody else. Unless it's like an alpha type of player, like a Jalen Waddle or something like that. Not concerned about Metcalf losing the number 1 status in the Steelers offense. Again, he's coming off his worst game of the season. He had 2 catches for 6 yards. Like, just a terrible game, only 4 targets, back in his low average depth of target role. But 2 of his targets were inside the 5-yard line. So he's still seeing a lot of high value opportunities, especially near the end zone. This game was a little bit of an outlier in terms of how Rodgers was throwing so close to the line of scrimmage. Now, that's been the case for Rodgers most of the year, but just in this particular matchup, it was like overemphasized, like how short he was throwing the ball. There have been in past matchups where they have gone down to DK Metcalf a little bit more down the field. Metcalf's already had his bye week. He's going to bounce back after his worst game of the season. He has touchdown equity, and Metcalf has one of the best schedules in the fantasy football playoffs. Dolphins, Lions, Browns. So I like him buying low just after the worst game of the season when he's basically been a pretty locked and loaded like wide receiver 2 with a lot of touchdown equity.
Would you rather trade for DK Metcalf or Tetairoa McMillan with them being back-to-back in the rankings?
I think I would rather trade for Metcalf because I think that he has shown the higher ceiling. I'm not sure if you can look at this. Who's scored? I mean, he's got more touchdowns this year. Like, we clearly know he's going to have the opportunity to score more touchdowns. So if you're just tying scoring to ceiling, I think it would be Metcalf in that capacity. And
Metcalf is wide receiver 20 on the season overall, with Tetairoa McMillan as wide receiver 22. That's in half PPR.
Yeah, so that's interesting because Metcalf scored all the touchdowns, and he's only barely edging out Tetairoa McMillan.
He has 5 touchdowns, so he has 3 more touchdowns.
I feel like it's so much more.
But it's because he's getting them in multiple games, and Ted has only gotten them in the one game. DK doesn't have any multi-touchdown games, so he has 5 different games with the score, whereas McMillan just has 1.
Yeah, and I think that we talked about this where in both Rodgers games where Rodgers has thrown 4 or more touchdowns, Metcalf didn't score in either of those games.
Well, who do you think costs more in a trade?
Probably McMillan, because he's a rookie and people will hold on to the rookies breaking out in the second half of the season. I know I would probably value McMillan a little bit more. I'm not sure where
I think I would ranks. Too. But I do think it's fair that they're like again, those 2, Michael Pittman right behind him, Sutton and Higgins, that feels like a really correct group of 5 to be all together, in my opinion.
Yeah. I think, I still think that Metcalf might have the higher weekly ceiling just because we've seen him score a lot of touchdowns. And the Steelers, right? I mean, maybe their defense has turned the corner. They got Kyle Duggar. Everything's fixed, or maybe they'll go back to being a defense that we're attacking for fantasy. Whereas, I mean, the Panthers have also been pretty up and down. I guess I'm just like more confident that Rodgers can maybe facilitate some higher spike weeks for Metcalf. But again, that's
borne out so far. I mean, for as much as we like McMillan, he has 1 wide receiver 1 finish on the season, and it was wide receiver 12 the week he had 2 touchdowns. Yeah. He was only wide receiver 12 because he didn't have much yardage. His next highest is wide receiver 14. After that, it's been much more of a floor play than a ceiling play.
Yeah. And I think that is McMillan in a nutshell this year. He's been a really high floor, not high ceiling player, but maybe that gets unlocked in the second half of the season. And Metcalf it really depends on like what day of the week it is or which week you look at, because sometimes he's being used downfield. I just feel very confident that his red zone usage is going to be one of the best in the NFL.
Both these guys seem like strong buys. You can use the trade analyzer at fantasypros.com/myplaybook or in the Fantasy Pros app to instantly evaluate how any trade will affect your team for this week, the rest of the season, or even in Dynasty. Let's go to the wide receivers to sell. Who do you have for us, Erickson?
Yeah, this one was the toughest one to put on the sheet because I love this player, but I think that he is a sell because I think you can get a lot for him. It's A.J. Brown, wide receiver for the Philadelphia Eagles. So we still don't know exactly what the length of time it's going to take for him to come back from this hamstring injury. So he missed week 8. The Eagles were on a bye week. So assuming that he'll probably be back in the starting lineup because that's usually what we see. But sometimes these hamstring injuries can be lagging and they can take a little bit longer to heal. And this was something that he may have been dealing with in the offseason and maybe is kind of attributing to his lack of efficiency this year because the number one wide receiver for the Eagles this year has not been A.J. Brown. It has been DeVonta Smith. DeVonta Smith has been much more efficient than A.J. Brown has been. He's a top 10 graded receiver per PFF. A.J. Brown is 23rd. They have almost an identical target share, except Smith is averaging 2.24 yards per route run, whereas A.J. Brown is significantly worse. I believe that A.J. Brown is actually averaging a career low in terms of yards per route run this season. So in this offense that the Eagles have been using in their passing game, it has been DeVonta Smith that has been really thriving, especially being used even more out of the slot, whereas A.J. Brown has been less efficient. Now, both guys have obviously popped off, and we've seen what DeVonta Smith has done over the last couple weeks. Just been an absolute monster. And I guess for me, why are we valuing A.J. Brown over DeVonta Smith? Is that just because of the multiple season sample size of the two players? A.J. Brown is an alpha. Like, that's what he's built like, and that's what he looks like. But this year specifically, he has not been the most productive receiver for the Eagles. It has been DeVonta Smith, and it's a 7-game sample size. So it's not just like one game where, well, Smith has been better. Smith has been better overall this season, and the target share has been almost identical between the top two Eagles wide receivers. So I still think A.J. Brown is viewed as the clear-cut, locked and loaded number one wide receiver on this offense, and that just really hasn't been the case when you just look at the numbers. So again, this isn't sell A.J. Brown because he's going to be bad. This is sell A.J. Brown because I think that he's overvalued as the number one wide receiver on the Eagles.
I only have A.J. Brown in one league, and it's a guillotine league, and I'm afraid to start him. I have really strong receivers. You get this far into the season, you have a pretty strong roster, so I don't have to start him. But like, there's no chance. I borderline am considering dropping him and hoping somebody else starts him and takes a hit because
very boomer bust, volatile, and you feel like he could win your week and then absolutely nuke your week the following week.
Yeah. It's horror. It's truly terrifying to start him in a normal league, let alone like a guillotine format. He does have good matchups coming up. So they just had the bye. They're at Green Bay this week on Monday night. Then they go Detroit, at Dallas, Chicago, at Los Angeles, the Chargers, home against Vegas, at Washington in week 16 is amazing, and then at Buffalo in week 17. So it's a shame he doesn't get the second Washington game before week 18, but there's a lot of good matchups. That's a lot of green on his player card.
That is true. If I send you a trade to get DeVonta Smith with my A.J. Brown, do you do that?
I think I probably would accept. I would rather have A.J. Brown.
Okay.
But you're making a really compelling case for why that's the wrong decision.
And
would it totally stun you? Would it totally stun you to be like, hey, this was just this like really weird roller coaster of a first half for him? Like, kind of, they're coming off the Super Bowl, long season, like whatever. Getting to the second half, it's crunch time. Like, all right, A.J. Brown is like the alpha. He's the guy. We know he's one of the best receivers in the NFL. Like, we're starting to throw the ball deep more than we did in the first month of the season. Coming out of the bye, that happens even more. He's healthy, and he's just clearly the better option in this offense. That wouldn't stun me.
So the thing that concerns me most about Brown is, because I don't disagree where, look, he's got a lot of good matchups. He's a good wide receiver. Trust me, I am president of the AJB wide receiver 1 fan club, right? I love A.J. Brown, but I want to acknowledge how good DeVonta Smith has been and how much better he has been than A.J. Brown. He's been way more efficient this year in this offense. And remember a couple years ago with Stephon Diggs, how the vibes weren't great? What happened after the Bills bye week? He got totally phased out of the offense. So that's like my fear with, what if that's the outcome we get with A.J. Brown?
They can't phase him out entirely. You think that would happen?
I didn't think they were going to do it to Stephon Diggs. Again, it's a different team, but they leaned into the run game. And then, because and Diggs was like, I don't know, like, they're just doing something different. We know the Eagles, in their heart of hearts, want to run the ball. Like, they want to establish it with Saquon Barkley like, so badly. And I just don't think that plays well into what A.J. Brown does. Yes, he's going to have spike weeks, right? I'm not going to, like, again, this isn't sell him for literally nothing, but I mean, maybe this is a bold prediction. I think that DeVonta Smith outscores A.J. Brown the rest of the way.
I mean, he's done it so far, so
yeah,
like it's like a slight bold prediction. I wouldn't, it's not going out on a limb here.
No, because I'm not trying to do that necessarily, but I'm just looking at this is what we've seen so far. So far, it's been DeVonta Smith as the guy, and I'm usually the lower guy on DeVonta Smith because I'm like so A.J. Brown pilled because I love him so much, but I'm just acknowledging what I've been seeing and what lays out in the numbers, and it's been DeVonta Smith as a closer wide receiver one than A.J. Brown being the clear front runner.
I'm gonna say that A.J. Brown outscores Smith the rest of the season. It's ranked that way, at least in consensus, and I agree with that.
How far away are they apart?
They are how far away are they for what they've done so far, or in the rankings?
In the rankings.
A.J. Brown is wide receiver 16 in rest of season consensus rankings, and DeVonta Smith is wide receiver 26, so 10 spots apart.
You think that's right?
No, I think it should be closer. I agree with that.
Okay.
I think Brown will finish with more, but I think it should be closer.
Okay, so maybe your takeaway from this is not sell A.J. Brown, but buy DeVonta Smith, right?
Maybe.
Whatever way you want to spin it, but just wanted to bear out those numbers. I thought that was interesting with the Eagles receivers, that really it's been a lot closer than you just expect from wide receiver one, wide receiver two.
Give me another wide receiver to sell.
Deebo Samuel for the Washington Commanders. This Commanders offense just scares me with Marcus Mariota as the quarterback. Jaden Daniels was kind of the tide that lifts all boats. And Deebo Samuel, ever since he got injured, his production has fallen off substantially. He's been outside the top 45 wide receivers in his last 3 games, despite 5+ targets in all those matchups. Now, he was better this past week when he was not on the injury report altogether. But I've just seen this story play out with Deebo the last couple of years where he starts out the gates, a couple weeks into the season, he's red hot. We're like, man, I was too low on Deebo Samuel, and then he gets banged up, and then his production just falls off a cliff. So even though Terry McLaurin is banged up, I think you can kind of use that as a way to sell off Deebo. Again, he had 27% target share last week. That was pretty good. He had a carry for 3 yards, but 5 catches for 41 yards, right? Like the yardage totals are not there with Deebo. So even though he is seeing volume, I think I'm using that argument to push him away to somebody as opposed to buying into the idea, oh, this can work. I just don't think the upside is really there with Deebo Samuel. So I'm trying to flip him for a player that historically we see fade in the second half of the season.
Deebo is a guy I would sell for whatever you could get. I have no interest in him, even if you're not getting great market value. With Daniels missing an extended period of time and him being the type of player that he is, like you said, kind of having faded in the past. I just really want, we talked about this in the running back show. I want little to nothing to do with this Commanders offense going forward. And if that means taking a slight value hit on where you perceive you should get for a player like Deebo, I'm okay with that. If you get anything that you can paint a picture of high upside or, this is like just a player that I'm more comfortable with, I wouldn't worry about the rankings. I would trade him for somebody ranked lower than him and feel fine about it.
Would you trade Deebo Samuel for Rashid Shaheed?
I don't love receivers that change teams.
But you just made the argument, who's got more upside?
I would say Shaheed.
Because again, imagine JSN misses one. I mean, Rashid Shaheed could go for like 150 yards in one game where JSN misses, right? So the targets aren't going to get any higher for Deebo, right? He is locked in as the wide receiver one on the Commanders. Whereas Shaheed, he's going to have games where he does nothing, but I think he'd have some monster week winning games. And at this point in the season, that's what we're chasing. We're chasing guys that, hey, I needed this guy and he won me my week. Deebo is not going to win you your week.
The 1 week he might win you your week, though, is week 17 when they face Dallas.
Deebo?
Yes.
But is he still upright at that point? That's the concern, man. Like, that's the concern with Deebo.
That's the one where I'm like, it'd be nice to have him for week 17.
No. Make sure that, okay, when you're doing any of these trades, you got to make sure before you trade away anybody, what's the Dallas schedule like? What's the Bengals schedule like? You just got to double check. Just double check those.
Quarterbacks and tight ends. Give me one buy from this group of positions and one sell.
JJ McCarthy is going to be my quarterback to buy or add off of waivers, however way you want to spin it. 3 games from McCarthy this season. He has 2 top 13 fantasy finishes. He's averaged 20 points per game in those 2 strong finishes. Again, his one bad game was against the Falcons, but he is showing that he can produce with these high-end wide receivers at his disposal with Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson. He's also adding rushing. He has 2 rushing touchdowns, so he's adding stuff with mobility. And when you look at the Vikings schedule, per the Fantasy Pro strength of schedule, number 1 quarterback schedule rest of season, also top 10 for wide receivers. So, look, if you had Daniels, if you're hurting at quarterback, I think McCarthy is the upside play that you can still get, whether it's on waivers or cheap as a trade, because he's probably somebody's QB too.
It's surprising to me that he has the number 1 schedule rest of season. Like, he has Baltimore this week. That defense is better than it was at the beginning. That's probably dragging those numbers down. He has games at Green Bay, at Seattle. Those are not easy. You know, like he's at the Giants, who are not a tough matchup, but they do have a good pass rush. Like Detroit, I know, like, can give up passing yards because they're ahead a lot, but like this is a pretty good team. Like, I know he just played them, but I mean, he just played them and he had under 150 passing yards. Like, his successful weeks have been really driven by touchdowns. He's had 2 passing touchdowns and a rushing touchdown in both of those 2 weeks, where he's finished really, really well. He was QB 11 and QB 13 in those 2. The yardage has not been there. He does not have 160 passing yards in a game this season. And the rushing, he has not topped 25 rushing yards in a game. So it's been something. Like, it helps a little, but it's really been touchdown driven for him to have been successful as a fantasy quarterback so far. Do you see him as like you want him as a rest of season option, or do you see him as like a streamer because, it's the Ravens and they've been bad for a lot of the year? It sounds like you're thinking more long-term with him.
I am. I think that he can carve out a starting role on your fantasy team. I think that, to your point, the matchups probably aren't as good as they are on paper per se. Because
he does get some good ones. He gets Chicago, he gets Washington, he gets Dallas. Like, there are good matchups in there. I don't want to make it sound like it's a terrible schedule, but there are also some tough ones in there too. Yeah,
no, I can definitely agree with that. But he's only played 3 games, like in his NFL career, right? So I've seen enough where at least in the 3 games he's played, he's flashed a fantasy QB1, which he's been in 2 of his 3 games played, essentially. So that's kind of what I'm buying into. Which quarterback could I potentially see turn into a fantasy QB1 the rest of the way? It is JJ McCarthy. So that's why I think that if you're hurting a quarterback, he is one of the options, especially because he's available on waivers in a lot of spots. I think that he, because of the rushing he offers, maybe a little bit more upside than some of the pocket passers that you are kind of like toying with, or, you know, for example, like a Trevor Lawrence. Like, do you want him rest of the season, or do you want Jimmy McCarthy? Like, what else do we need to see from Trevor Lawrence this year to, okay, is this going to happen for him? Especially with Lawrence, talking about bad schedules, his schedule is really tough rest of the season. So I know they got Jacobi Meyers. Maybe that's a boost, but it's, again, a receiver he's never played with. So it remains to be seen how quickly it takes Meyers to get acclimated and up to speed to actually help Trevor Lawrence.
I would rather have McCarthy than Lawrence rest of the season.
I agree.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. McCarthy is ranked, I meant to look this up, QB 20 in the consensus rest of season rankings.
Yeah.
So that feels maybe a little low, but right range.
I think that when you just look at the other names, it's probably correct. But he's a player that I could definitely see pushing up.
Would you rather have him or Brock Purdy?
I would rather have a healthy Brock Purdy, but I don't know when that's going to happen.
I mean, Brock Purdy with the information we have right now.
I mean, if I'm trying to add a quarterback this week, I can't add a guy that probably won't play. So I'm going to probably add McCarthy.
Would you rather have McCarthy or Justin Fields rest of the season?
Dude. My rankings say Fields because I just trust the numbers.
One more, just because it's hilarious to even have to ask Joe Flacco or JJ McCarthy.
Dude, Joe Flacco just threw for 500 yards.
He's been amazing.
Without a shoulder.
He's been QB6, QB7, QB2 in his last 3 games.
Dude, of course I'm taking Joe Flacco. Yeah.
Joe Flacco is 2 touchdowns away with the Bengals for having as many passing touchdowns with the Bengals as Kenny Pickett had in his career with Pittsburgh.
Did you know that last week was the first time Joe Flacco ever threw for 400 yards?
No, but it doesn't surprise me. He's had big touchdown games before, I remember he had a 5 touchdowns game against Tampa when he was with the Ravens, but the yardage it's not surprising to me that he never hit 400.
I would assume that he probably has a bunch of like 380, 39, like a bunch of like high 300 games.
Definitely some of those
fell underneath the 400-yard passing. But, I mean, just absolute craziness what Joe Flacco is doing.
Do you feel like it's like under-discussed how insane this is?
Kind of. I am also kind of concerned that is it just going to be like this for the like all 18 weeks of the season?
I mean, the defense is going to be bad all season, so they are going to have to throw a lot. If his shoulder stays intact,
I mean, thank the Lord they have the bye week this week, man. I don't. So he can rest up.
So his next highest passing total prior to this, 389, 385, 384, 382, 381, 376, 374. So there's a lot of over 350s where he just didn't get to 400.
But he didn't have Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. So
his next highest was 389, and it was against the St. Louis Rams. That's how long ago it was, back in 2011. And it's a 37-7 win. Without looking at this box score, I'm guessing this was the game where Torrey Smith had 3 touchdowns, like in the first quarter to his big breakout. Game. I'm going to pull up the yep, that was the one. He had 3 touchdowns, 74-yard, 41-18 in the first quarter of that game. His big breakout. I believe it was week 3 of that season.
That's a great name pull. He was a fun receiver.
Torrey Smith is my favorite player of all time because he's from Virginia like me. He went to Maryland like me, and I overlapped with him a little at Maryland. Not that I knew him, but I was there at the same time.
You guys are boys. Right.
Yeah. And then won a Super Bowl for my favorite NFL team. I was like, this is just like my favorite player of all time. So I love Torrey Smith. All right, let's go to the sell for quarterbacks and tight ends.
Keeping the theme of selling Commanders receivers, Zach Ertz. He has just been non-existent in the games with Marcus Mariota as the quarterback. So Ertz is a catch the ball and fall down type of tight end. He doesn't create yards after the catch, so you're getting no upside with him on a play-to-play basis. He needs volume and he needs touchdowns, which are just going to be lacking when it is Mariota as the quarterback and not Jaden Daniels. He's also an aging tight end, and this also kind of ties into with Deebo Samuel. I think for the Commanders, what's the point of trotting out all these veteran guys in a lost season? Shouldn't you be evaluating your young talent or what young talent you actually have on the roster? So it wouldn't surprise me, like, get Ben Sinnott. Get him some reps, man. Like, figure out if this guy can be a tight end that you can use in the future. Jalen Lane. Use a rookie wide receiver. Put him in the Deebo Samuel role. See what he can do as opposed to just padding the stats of these veteran guys in a lost season. So that concerns me about some of these veterans for the Commanders, that it's a lost year, and what's the point of featuring them as offensive pieces when you're not going to be contending for anything and your quarterback is hurt? So Ertz is a sell for me because I couldn't bring myself to put Mark Andrews on again for like the 5th time this year.
He probably is a sell, though.
Yes.
Listen, you went back to the well with Travion Henderson in the running backs episode. You went back to the well with Tetairoa McMillan earlier this episode. You can go back to the well with Mark Andrews.
No, because on the rank show we talked about Mark Andrews, tight end or bust, and then on Thursday night he catches 2 touchdowns on 3 targets. It's just because everyone knows. Everyone knows Mark Andrews is at this point. We all know. And to your point, again, talking about Bengals and Cowboys matchups in the playoffs, Week 15 is Bengals and Ravens. So Mark Andrews can score 3 touchdowns in that game, and then I feel like an idiot. So.
Let's go to the audience questions here because we're running long, and I can't talk about Mark Andrews anymore. We have still a bunch of them here, so we'll rapid fire through these, Erickson. First question here. Trade away Josh Jacobs and Courtland Sutton. Receive Jamar Chase. It's full PPR.
Yeah, I do that.
I would do that too.
PPR, yeah.
As long as Flacco's shoulder stays on, I would do that.
It doesn't matter, man. He barely can move his arm, and he threw for 470 yards.
What brand of potato chips am I able to sell Brian Thomas Jr. for? Will name brand alone get me Doritos, or do I have to settle for hers?
Hers, probably. This Brian Thomas Jr. season, man, is, dude, it's so terrible.
I've been on these. I've been trying to like eat better, and I've been eating these like Quest potato chips, and like they're protein chips. And I thought they were going to taste terrible, and I actually think some of them taste really good. They have like these like loaded taco version ones that I think like taste actually really good. Their ranch ones are good. I would recommend if anybody's looking for like a little more protein in your potato chip. Quest does a good job there. So I'll sell Brian Thomas Jr. for some Quest potato chips. Will be my pick. Yeah, like I don't even know what to do with Thomas at this point.
He's injured. He doesn't fit what Trevor Lawrence does well.
It just feels like a lot. Like it's not like a Terry McLaurin level lost season, but it feels like it's a lost year.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that if you can't trade him, you just keep him on your bench until something changes. But I would say Jaguars play the Jets in the fantasy playoffs, and at least there will be no Sauce Gardner this time. So that's good, at least.
Yeah. Quest, sponsor the show. That's my takeaway from that conversation. Next question here. Packaging Tetairoa McMillan, who we talked about, and Stephon Diggs, who would be a realistic target? This guy already has CeeDee Lamb as his wide receiver 1, but he's wondering if he packaged McMillan and Diggs, who he should target.
So if you're looking to move up at the wide receiver, I think that Egbuka would probably be the guy I would look at. I talked about him as a buy on last week's show. Obviously, the Buccaneers are coming off their bye week, so go back and listen to that show. The analysis is still relevant, essentially, with Egbuka. So he would be a name that I would move up to get. I think that's also pretty attainable, too, because that way the other person's still getting a rookie. I think it could work.
I think Egbuka's a great call, because I think anybody ranked ahead of him in our rest of season rankings, you're probably not going to get with those two. And anybody below, I'm not sure I would want to get. I think Egbuka is like the exact right one that would be worth doing and is still attainable.
Shout out to me.
So, that's good. It's great. Yes, definitely shouts to Erickson. It's a great call. PPR, no tight end slot, but 2 flexes. Would you treat Brock Bowers as a wide receiver 1 essentially on your team, or would you package him to improve with an actual wide receiver? This guy also has lots of depth at running back, he mentions. But, with no tight end, it's PPR and 2 flexes. Are you just viewing Bowers as a high-level receiver, or would you package him to try and get a receiver?
I think I'd probably just view him as a high-level receiver.
I think in these healthy games, which is not many this year, he's been like what it would essentially be like wide receiver 3 or something. Now, when you have a small sample size, one massive blow up game goes a long way with that. But I mean, we're obviously big Brock Bowers believers on this show.
Yes, it is a small sample size, but I think that the fact that he's only been healthy for 2 games in full this year, and those are the games he's both smashed. They just traded Jacobi Meyers, right? There is no target competition for Brock Bowers, right? Mayer and Trey Tucker, rookie wide receivers. Geno Smith knows that he knows exactly where the bread is buttered, and his name is Brock Bowers. So I think that I mentioned when I talked about Brock Bowers as a buy low a couple weeks ago, it reminded me a lot of the Puka Nacua situation from last year, where he gets hurt week 1, looks like, man, is this like a lost season for Puka? And then he comes back immediately and then just picks up where he left off and just an absolute monster. So I think Bowers is set up to just be an absolute monster the rest of the way. So I would be viewing him as a wide receiver in this type of format.
In our early rest of season rankings for this week, he's tight end 2 behind McBride. That's great. I love Trey McBride as much as anybody, but Brock Bowers should be number 1.
Well, Brock Bowers doesn't play the Bengals in week 17. So, sorry.
Fair.
I mean, that's enough of a reason to be like, sorry. Gotta take McBride, because, dude, you guy could score 5 touchdowns in week 17.
Another Bowers-related question. This guy has both Bowers and Ferguson. Obviously, he's starting Bowers at tight end every week. Would you play Ferguson at flex, or would you just trade him?
I would trade Ferguson.
I agree with that. Would you give Courtland Sutton to receive Tetairoa McMillan and Bill Croskey-Merritt?
So Sutton is really interesting because he kind of feels like a sell. The schedule for the Denver Broncos isn't amazing rest of season. Now, one of those matchups, so actually, no, they already played the Jets, so they're not playing the Jets again. And it's actually crazy. Him and Troy Franklin have almost like an equal target share over the last 7 games. So, and what's also really interesting is Troy Franklin leads the NFL in red zone targets and 2-point conversions. Just a really crazy stat, because you think Courtland Sutton, like, that's his role in this offense as the red zone guy. That has not been the case. It has really been Troy Franklin that has emerged. So I already talked about McMillan as a buy low. So I think McMillan and Sutton, they may not be too far off. And I don't know if you're looking at the rest of season rankings. I feel like they're going to be ranked pretty close. So the fact that you get Bill as kind of like a throw-in as, hey, you play him in some of his positive matchups if you're hurting at running back. I think I do actually prefer T-Mac and Bill if I need a running back spot start in a couple of weeks. What do you think, Worm?
I would do the trade just because I would have Tetairoa McMillan ahead of Sutton.
Okay.
Not by a wide margin, but I do have him ahead. So therefore, if you're getting the extra piece. Now, when you make these 2-for-1 trades, you are going to have to drop somebody to make room. So I guess it depends on who the players you have to drop for Bill Merritt, because I'm not really that high on him. But as long as that you have somebody on your bench that's like an easy, obvious drop, then yes, I would make that trade.
Or if you just had someone got hurt, so you have an extra spot.
Yeah. Last question here. Any underperforming tight ends you like as targets and trades for the Tucker Craft manager?
Okay, so as a Tucker Craft manager, basically everywhere. This question resonates with me very, very well. So I did some digging, and the guy that, so I think Tyler Warren is kind of like an obvious one. He's had 2 bad games. You probably can't buy him that low because I think he's still viewed as an elite tight end. I'll just throw that name out there in case someone is frustrated. But the name that comes to mind, and I know that Fitz would be so proud of me, is actually Kyle Pitts. That would be the buy low tight end. Dude,
we're talking Kyle Pitts.
He's 3rd in the NFL in tight end receptions. 3rd. I couldn't believe it.
This is the meme, and I think I talked about this on a different show already. This is the meme from Avengers Endgame, where the Chosen One, Tilda Swinton's character, is like, "You're about 5 years too early." That's us going back in time when we were initially excited about Kyle Pitts. We're about 5 years too early. Now is the time to take advantage of all those shares we had on Kyle Pitts Island.
Yeah, man, he has 3+ catches in every single game this season, so he is giving you a floor. The touchdowns have not been there for him, although he's had a decent amount of red zone opportunities, and obviously Drake London is, again, it's hard for him to score when Bijan's scoring a lot, Drake London's scoring a lot, but I would say he looks more like the clear-cut number 2 pass catcher. Now, Bijan is probably the actual number 2, but he's clearly ahead of Darnell Mooney. Like, Mooney has been really bad this season, so Pitts is at least the number 3 option on the Falcons offense, which, look, Penix is a young quarterback. We've seen him fuel some fantasy success for guys like Drake London and Bijan Robinson. So I think Kyle Pitts, look, we know he can be a really talented player, and he's played relatively well this season. He's being more involved. He's seeing a decent amount of volume. So I think Kyle Pitts is probably the underrated guy, and he's probably on someone else's bench. So I would just kind of throw a bench receiver, bench running back to get Kyle Pitts if you're hurting at tight end. I know, like, that's a deal that I'm going to be sending out this weekend. The schedule for the Falcons rest of the way is pretty good for tight ends. So Kyle Pitts is my answer.
I wonder if somebody will end up trading for like Njoku or something like that. I wonder if the Packers will make a trade for a tight end. Yeah. Like, that would be an interesting one to keep an eye on.
Yeah, that makes so much sense.
Obviously, we will know if that's happened by the time this episode is released. We don't know as of yet, so we will see what happens there. We'll go ahead and wrap things up there. We went a little long for you with some of that extra trade deadline talk, so hope everybody enjoyed that. Best of luck on all your trades to make this week, Erickson. We only have a couple more weeks of this show before we get to fantasy trade deadlines here right around Thanksgiving. I believe the week before Thanksgiving will be our last version of this show. We will still have this show with the two of us. It'll just look a little different after the fantasy trade deadline. So couple more weeks for fun trade talk, and then we'll move into something a little different. So best of luck, everybody, making those trades, wheeling and dealing, and best of luck to all of your teams for the NFL trade deadline.
And also, too, Worm, before we go, we have to make sure that people know, like, Fantasy Pros unveiling new feature with the trades.
Trade Persuade. Yes, great call.
Persuade.
Did you successfully persuade anybody?
So I don't know if the way that it works is basically you using the trade analyzer, it spits out a trade, and then it comes up with a text that will then you send to your manager as a message. Now, it's not like, hey, this is a great deal for you, but it is kind of along those lines where it kind of breaks down the trade and why it's positives for both sides of the deal. And honestly, a kind of low-key, underrated positive I liked about it was it not only helped me convince the other manager. Now, the manager didn't read the deal, so it didn't end up going through, but it actually helped me kind of justify me making the deal, which I didn't really think about when I was looking at the Trade Persuade tool and thinking about, this is actually kind of justifying, no, this is a good deal for you, as opposed to the trade analyzer just kind of spitting out, okay, this is a good trade for you. You may look at it and think, is that a good trade for me? I'm kind of confused. Trade Persuade kind of breaks it down. So, this is actually benefiting me. Like, my running backs kind of stay the same, but I'm improving at tight end, or so on and so forth. So go check it out. It's in part of the Trade Central on Fantasy Pros on my playbook. Really cool feature that we've added. So yeah, I would go check it out.
I feel like there's just no trades that ever happen in my leagues that aren't Dynasty. Dynasty's different. Obviously, there are lots of trades in those formats. Not Dynasty. I feel like I never get trades anymore. I don't get offers. People don't respond to my offers. Like, I really like the idea of a tool that, and I haven't used it yet, so I'm not like evangelizing for it. Like, I like the idea of a tool, and from what you said, it's working really well. Yeah. And I know our dev team put a lot of effort into it. I I just really like the idea of a tool that could help get trades across, because trading is really fun. It's a kind of a key core element of fantasy football that feels like it's been lost. And we're not the first person to talk about it. Like, there have been articles written about how trades are harder than ever in a lot of leagues. People are so... I talk about this with one of my best friends a lot because he and I are both very into fantasy. People would much rather win a trade on value than make their team better. And that might sound counterintuitive, how those can be, kind of at opposite ends of each other, but it does happen. There are ways. If you have 8 amazing receivers and no good running backs, I know I talked earlier about you just want to get value. At a certain point, you don't have room to start those guys, so you do want to take advantage. Like, being able to persuade people and say, like, this actually is making your team better. I'm really hoping people use this tool and that it works and just gets more trading done, because trades are fun and it's part of the experience.
Yeah, trades are fun, and I think that a lot of the hesitance is, and even I kind of find myself this, you don't want to get swindled, right? You don't want to get fleeced by a trade.
Everybody's terrified of like what the group chat's going to say if you get fleeced.
Being the laughing stock of the league. And that's what people are afraid. But when you make trades that benefit both sides objectively, they benefit both sides. And that's what Trade Persuade is trying to break down, that no, this isn't a subjective type of take. Like, looking at the numbers, this is good for both sides. Make this deal, make both your teams better, and makes every other team in your league worse in comparison to your two teams. And this tool really helps break that down. So again, go check it out. Trade Persuade as part of Trade Central, my playbook. Worm, I'm expecting some trade offers from our content league. I'm looking forward to the Trade Persuade write-ups because I know it's coming right from you.
You need some trade help in that league because I just beat you this week. I don't know if you were how close potential. You are in first place. I'm in third. So we've both got pretty good teams. Your team looking worse though.
Tucker Craft,
so I know, yeah,
it's not good.
But I did pull out the win over you this week. So we'll see if you make any trades to try and strengthen yourself for the next time we face off, presumably in the playoffs. We'll go ahead and actually wrap up there. For Erickson, I'm Ryan Wormeli. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We'll see you again next time.